We are now recording. Speak good and loud because we're doing ambient audio in here because of the small venue.
Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and get going here. And since we started the recording for our folks online, what I'm going to do is, I don't know if we have 2 hours of stuff to go through. I usually, I think they put like a 3-hour block. Since this being the last session of the day, it usually goes between a little less than 2 hours. When I finish up, we'll finish up. You guys can kind of wander out. I don't think there'll be any sad feelings if we wrap up early in the day. But what I'll do is all of this stuff that I go through, I'm going to show you how to get the local copies of this. And if you have a machine that you want to set up, I'm going to be using Kali today, Kali Linux, to run WireShark today. Tomorrow I will be using, if you come back from the network forensics, I'll be using SandSift, which is pretty much both Debian based, but apples and oranges kind of in what you see on the screen. So the screenshots in the presentation will be SIFT. I'm using Kali today. I'll be more than happy to stick around, or if you have issues afterwards in setting this up, or some just semantic issues in your Kali Linux box. But if you didn't do it today, go ahead and grab that. It might be beneficial to come back tomorrow to have all this set up, and you'll be able to walk along all this. Because I'm not really a PowerPoint reader kind of person. I'm going to show you how to do this. I live and die by live demos. I think even though sometimes they crash and burn, it's real life. We don't read PowerPoints in real life, so and I understand you guys do that. So, but this is understanding. This is an intro to WireShark. So I'm going to start at a very low level. So it's going to be very basic, and then I'm going to work my way up to if you're a little more advanced in networks and understand Linux a little bit stronger. I want you to be able to take stuff out of this course as well. So, but I'm assuming that most of you guys coming in are pretty basic levels and haven't really worked with WireShark a lot. So, just to give you a background of who I am, as everyone can see that up there? Good? I'm not blocking it at all. Because I like to sit here because it's just easier for me to navigate here. So, my name is Josh Brunty. I am an assistant professor of digital forensics and information assurance at Marshall University, right down the road here in Huntington, West Virginia. Teaching our Bachelor of Science in Information Assurance program. My area of expertise is in network forensics, mobile forensics. I teach the Intro to Linux course. Video and image forensics. So I have a hodgepodge of courses that I kind of expertise at. But as far as my personal background, I was a digital forensics lab technical leader with our West Virginia State Police Laboratory down in Huntington, West Virginia. We have a digital forensics unit there on campus at Marshall. Started out as a laboratory examiner. And then I moved up to quality assurance manager, which is basically maintaining training records and SOPs and all that. And then moved up to the tech leader. That was in my prior life. In 2012, I started teaching this. So I kind of come a little bit different than a lot of other people who actually worked in the field rather than the traditional PhD, which is school, and then start teaching people how to do that. So I've done this, and I continue to do this a lot. One of the things that I teach very heavily in our program is to teach our students WireShark. If you've been watching the trends of the field lately, if you're a system admin, you know that it's been a very useful tool for a number of years. But one of the things in the security side we got into, we started drinking and I'm not going to get into the vendors that did this, but we started drinking the Blinky Box Light Kool-Aid there for a while, which is, this does this for us, we'll push this button, and this will capture this for us, and then we find out that we're not getting the information we need. So you're seeing this kind of resurrection or this revival of packet capturing, believe it or not. And it's a kind of a lost art form. And people that effectively know how to use WireShark in a security environment, there's so many different uses for this. This is like, having a crescent wrench in your toolbox. You know, how many times do you find yourself using a crescent wrench? You know, you use it to put on a bolt, turn the bolt off. You'll use it to beat things off with. You know, you use it for a number of different uses. That's how I approach WireShark. Teaching students, okay, this is something that you can put in your toolkit. So that's part of that. If you guys have met Bill Gardner, he'll probably come in and troll here in a little bit. He usually does. I usually try to hammer him back. You can follow him on Twitter. He's one of my counterparts there. And my claim to fame is I actually spent some time with him. So I was privileged to be in his company. You're welcome. So here's some resources that I think you guys, if you're getting into this and really are serious about this, one of the books that I draw a lot of stuff from is the Laura Chappell's resources that are out there. She gets really big into WireShark University, if you've ever heard of that. That WireShark 101 book is excellent. It's a very big book, but she has a lot of packet capture files that are available with that. Everything that I learned, pretty much I learned from her. To give her credit where credit's due, she is one of the, her and the original creator, Gerald Combs, have done a lot to perpetuate this, and now they're moving into the security arena. So very helpful resource there. The second book is what I use in my network forensics class. It's the Davidoff Jonathan Handbook. It has a lot of different exercises in it. So it's a little bit dated. It came out in 2012. Some stuff that I'll be covering tomorrow, but a good, introductory level resource that kind of scaffolds you up through the, the forensic process. And I'm just trying to set a baseline for you guys that are coming back tomorrow to be able to work in this and be comfortable working in this. So I'm going to focus more on that tomorrow. The second one is the network security monitoring. This is a very heavy incident response using WireShark and a lot of other command line utilities. It's one of those no-starch books, a really, really good book to have. And the newest one that I just added, really been pleased with it. You all have probably heard of the Red Team Field Manual. Red Team Field Manual gets into offensive security. They have one called Blue Team Field Manual now that really has a whole section dedicated to some of these WireShark options and switches. I think you can get it for like $17 on Amazon. So I'll put the links in there, and I'll show you how you can get a hold of these links here in a second. But I've really been enjoying that handbook here recently. Now here's what I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using Kali today. I've already mentioned that. You can grab those downloads from SAN. So if you do go out and do a search for SAN SIFT, S-I-F-T, you can pick up that. It's just a souped-up version of Ubuntu, Ubuntu 14.04. So if you're familiar with Ubuntu or Linux at all, you'll find it very helpful to be able to use SIFT as well. It's same as Kali, same terminal, same bash. You'll need a bash terminal on this one, primarily because I'm going to show you some TCPDump switches that I commonly use. I know in the class schedule it says it's an intro to WireShark. I'm not a big fan of using WireShark on a consistent basis to do packet capturing. I'll explain that here shortly. Some of the caveats of using WireShark in the overhead. Stable internet browser just to grab these, and I've also given you a link to here, and if you want to visit this, I'll go ahead and go out and visit this for you. One of the things you can do is if you fire up Kali on my GitHub page. So just go ahead and walk you through this here real quick. So I'm going to log into my Kali instance, and I'm going to pull these down for you. So one of the ways that you can pull down this particular repository is just to fire up your terminal, and I'm going to do a git clone. So basically what I'm going to do is clone this GitHub repository. So I'm going to do http www.github.com/Josh Brunty, and then it's a hack with a 3 con capitalized 8 underscore WireShark. So if you all can see that, you can't see that. Oh, that stinks. Am I going to be fighting with PowerPoint again? It seems to be. So I got to end the presentation. So what I might end up having to do is have to go to, I didn't realize it was doing that. My apologies. So right now I'm in back in Cali. So what I might do here is, if it's all right with you all, once I get the slides in hand, I will go through and walk you through each slide in a live format, and then you all have the slides to go back and reference to. Is that okay? Some of you guys don't have computers, so I want you to see what's actually going on here. So I'm going to git clone this repository. This is going to go into my home folder. So if you want to put it on your desktop, what I would recommend doing first is probably like CD onto your desktop, just so you'd have easy access. So I'm just going to CD on the desktop and then do a git clone from there. So what that will do is that'll clone that whole GitHub repository if you're networked up okay. And I'll show you what's in there. So hopefully if my internet doesn't crap out on me. In that folder, you'll see a couple of things. It'll be a couple of cheat sheets, a README file, the PDF of the slide deck. So what I might do is just go through the slide deck in the PDF here rather than going back to the PowerPoint, and a couple of Pcap files that I'll be walking you through. So you'll have all this. If you're not comfortable with working in terminal, a second way to do that is to just fire up your browser and go visit that same GitHub page, which is www.github.com/Josh Brunty. Go into my GitHub repository. That's the easiest way to find it, and then you'll see the repository. I think I put it on my pin repository, so you click into that. Another thing you can do is go to that little green button that says clone or download, which is right there. If you click on that, you can download that as a zip file. So you can download it from a browser or onto any platform whatsoever. So you don't have to do this technically in Linux. I'm just want to be a cool kid and try to work everything in Linux because just to me it's easier. So I'm going to just save that to my desktop. Same folder. So it's pretty much the same end game by doing all this. So I want to get those in your hands. I will post these when Adrian posts the video. This will be going up to Iron Geek's YouTube page, which is Adrian Crenshaw's page. These should be up either this evening, tomorrow, or by the end of the weekend. Also, follow Iron Geek at Twitter. He also posts the handles and the links to all of these presentations that they're taking as well. So if you miss an option here, or if you miss something that I was talking about, never fear, you'll have this video to go back to hopefully by the end of the week. So and you'll have these files to go back and recreate this. So it's kind of cool. I go back and do a lot of other add in, and I'll if you have questions, I'll answer post on the page as well. So what I'm going to do is, I guess I'll just go from this PDF just to make life a little bit easier. So that repository will have all this stuff in there. Another thing that you would need to do is make sure that you're running a version 2 of WireShark. I just recommend that. SIFT by default comes out with a version 1 of WireShark. Most Linux distros do. The newest version of Kali has WireShark 2 built in. In order to determine whether you're running a version of WireShark, I usually fire up WireShark from terminal and run it as sudo from terminal itself, just to make sure that I am in as root user. You can see there, if I go to the help file, it will tell me what version I'm running here. So in this case, I'm running, looks like version 2.4.1, so it looks like we're good here. If you need to update WireShark, you're better off to go through the update page here. And I'll show you how to do an update here real quick. I don't know if I don't update every day, so of course quit. Let me zoom in on that. Can you guys see that okay? Probably need it zoomed in.
I think it needs to be like on like 400%.
400%, where I see like two characters on the screen at one time. I'm bad about doing that, by the way, where your command will like go on the two screens. It's bad. With like, you know, my eyesight's failing me too, so this is good for me, but you won't see that. You should be able to see that. If you can, I would refer you to my optometrist. I think that you might need it. Last year, I was like, it was so big, and they're like, why is it so big? I was like, I can't see anything. Got me some new specs this past year, so. Looking good. Looking fleek, huh? Alright, so to update that, I will, and these are all in the slides here. You can just do an apt-get install. So if you run the apt-get install, make sure that you're picking up the WireShark QT. They may have closed off that repository. If it's updated, it'll say 0, 0, and 0. So you're good to go if you have the newest version. The newest version is 2.4.1.1 or 1-1. They're, from my understanding, they might be cutting the QT off of the end of WireShark for the 2 version. They're trying to phase out version 1. So the whole goal in that was, if you do an apt-get install WireShark, some distros were confused with whether they were pulling out version 1 or 2. So that's where you'd want to kind of tag that QT until it doesn't work anymore. So that's where we're getting that from. Alright, so next thing you want beyond that is just to understand what WireShark is used for. What we use WireShark for is a decoding and analyzing captured traffic. That's the purpose of using WireShark. It is used to extract contents of packets and packet files. We use it for Pcaps. We use it to extract traffic out and look for certain things. Here's what WireShark is not used for, and this is a lot of my counterparts in the field. They feel like that WireShark should be able to take days upon days upon days of traffic. No. It's not made for that. It's not made to run 24/7. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. If you need something to run 24/7, go and court RSA. Go to someone who does SIM-based analysis for you. It's not made for that. This is not an end-all be-all thing. It's not a firewall. It's not something that you can remotely go through large amounts of traffic and say, oh, you know, I found our attacker. It's not made for that. And it's not real-time monitoring tool. That's what IDSs are for. I had a person come up to me 2 years ago and it's like, this doesn't work for me because it's not an IDS, it's not a firewall, it's not, I got to run this all the time. This is not what it's for. We're looking for either a breach that's going on, we're looking for a web page that may have been compromised, or we're looking for anomalous traffic, and we're looking to do that very swiftly and quickly. I would recommend that if you're wanting to use WireShark, kind of keep it in a 24-hour gap. So if you have a breach that's happening, or if you have a web page that you feel that may have been compromised, use this to sandbox. So I do this all the time. I had a client one time that asked me, I think I have a web page that's been compromised. Okay, so what makes you think that? Or getting redirected to this site. Well, I'm afraid to click on it because I don't know what it will do to my network. So the first thing that I do, spin up the packet capture, go into my sandbox and visit the page while the packets are capturing in the background. I find out that it does redirect them to another site, and I'm able to show them where it redirects them to and what malware packages it was downloading in the process. So there's a practical usage of it right there, if not for anything else. But we also use it to just to see what chatter we have on our network. With advanced persistent threats, with exploit kits, they all have certain behavior. They all behave in the same similar manner for the most part, at least under the hood they do. So you can see that at the packet level, and that's really important to know how to do that. So that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for decoding, analyzing, and extracting potential anomalous packets is what we're doing that for. Now, the first thing that I like to go through is TCPDump, and people will ask, why do you teach TCPDump? Well, TCPDump is a command line based utility. If you haven't used it before, I'll walk it through right here. You can do filtering from it, but we're going to save the filtering for WireShark. But the nice thing about TCPDump is that it's very agile on how it's deployed in your network. So say, for example, you have a Raspberry Pi 1. How many of you guys have one of those lying around that you never use? Multiples, right? You ever find, what am I going to do with these things? What's my purpose of these moving forward? Don't want to throw them away. Don't want to toss them out. They're perfect little TCPDump utilities. You can set these up, put a little screen on them, deploy them in your network real quickly, automate these with shell scripts, turn them loose. As long as it has a terminal and it has something to write to, as long as you have a terminal to use, you have TCPDump at your disposal. You can't say the same about WireShark. You can kind of argue it with T-Shark, but it's a very agile command line utility. You can also run it and fire it in networks where you aren't going to necessarily have GUI access. I know some of you guys are system admins coming in. You work in networks where you have machines that do not have a graphic interface. Am I right? Most of your, if not all your Linux distros out there are going to have TCPDump built in. So why not use it? And it also lets you either read or capture that live traffic. And there's some cool stuff I'll show you here that automates some of the stuff in TCPDump, which is just really sweet. I'm excited to show it to you. As a matter of fact, I was talking to some folks earlier about it. T-Shark is basically, if you ever heard of T-Shark, T-Shark is basically a TCPDump Lite capture program. It is built to be the command line complementary part of WireShark. It's very similar and has the same flags as TCPDump has. I'm not going to go over it today, primarily because I just don't have enough time. And T-Shark sometimes tests my patience on some of the switches. So I'm going to stick with TCPDump, and then I'm going to move over to WireShark. Now, WireShark is GUI, and that's one of the beauties of it, that it lets you graphically see packets. I'm going to show you how to set it up, give you some tips and utilities of how to quickly make this the way you want it, and look at some of these packet traces that you picked up in TCPDump. So I'm going to run that entirely through Linux. You don't have to run it through Linux. You can run it through Windows. You can run it through Macintosh. Would not recommend it. The reason being is, Windows takes a lot of overhead for programs, and there's a lot of top-end stuff that goes in. It does not process the packets well. It just doesn't. It just doesn't do it well because you have about 3 different installs to run. A lot of people would argue otherwise, but the older I get, the less Windows I use, basically. That's just the way it is. So let's just look at TCPDump on a machine. So let's just say that I want to capture traffic through TCPDump. And a real easy command line switch is this is what TCPDump looks like at the basic level. If I capture this in text, and just to show you, for example, can I do this? Yeah, it's not going to let me do that. How do I do window switching in Kali? Is there a workspace that I can do that in? Or probably would be easier just to do workspace, wouldn't it? So, here we go. So I'll have workspace. No. Dang it. Go to workspace 2. Should have set all this up. Workspace 2 goes back. Okay, so regardless, can I do... Someone help me out how to switch windows.
Right-click on the terminal and send it to workspace 2.
Can I send it to workspace 2? Remove workspace, then...
Down, yeah.
Yeah. Can I do that? Oh, it shows up in workspace 2. Yes. I don't use Kali every day. I usually use a bunch of recips. So if I want to get out of my comfort zone to show you guys something that you guys want. So if I go back over to my terminal, and let's just say that I want to run TCPDump, one of the things that I recommend that if you want to learn the options of TCPDump, go view the help file first. See what's out there. The help file shows all the options that are available. Now, do you know all these options? No. It's easier sometimes to just go to the man page. The man page gets a little bit more into detail of what these particular flags will do in TCPDump. So you're never going to memorize everything in a command line. if you meet someone who is really good at memorizing things in the terminal, give them my contact info. They can they can help me out a great deal. I just forget things a lot. So don't feel inadequate because you can't remember things. That's what man pages and help files are for. So one of the things I'm just going to run TCPDump on this network. And notice here that it's going to just start listening on ETH0. And you can just see some of the ARC chatter in the background, some of the just background noise. This is capturing straight to screen. So you're going to see that that's kind of happening as we speak. I can fire up a browser to do certain stuff. You'll see it kind of light up like a Christmas tree as soon as it figures out that Firefox is starting up. So you see it going crazy in the background just to fire up the Kali page. So, real easy to start up a TCPDump capture. I'm going to stop that, just do a Control-Z. And that's really what the output looks like. Normally what you'll see is not just the time that it came through, which is normally the time, and then this is usually the milliseconds that it came through in that timestamp. We can change that later on. We can change that decoding. Normally you'll see the machine name. Now you can specify in WireShark later on that if you want to see the true DNS entry for that or just the straight up IP name. I'll show you how to change those over. You can see here that it looks like an SSH entry, and you can see that going into looks like some looks like a particular server there. So you can see the transaction that occurred to here. So it's usually source IP, destination DNS or entry, and then you see some additional info here. Now this is where it gets kind of squirrely with TCPDump. Sometimes it does not decode these packets well, so that's why we want to bring WireShark into the mix a little bit later on. But this is what your packet dumps look like, and this is what they look like on the screen. So sometimes reading those and parsing those, unless you're really, really good at grep, not always your best option. Let's break these down. So that last part there is literally, if you know what you're looking for, you can determine what that packet's being sent there. So you can get the destination host name, you can get the destination port number, and you can get TCP specific information at the end there. What was the acknowledgement time? And that's usually system admin stuff. To be honest with you, from a forensic IR standpoint, sometimes that doesn't really give us a lot of information. We want to know what port it's coming from, where our source is coming from, and what time that actually came through. So that's a breakdown of a particular packet there, or traditionally what TCPDump stores in the packets. Here's a similar capture from T-Shark. You can see it looks a little bit differently. It doesn't tag as much onto the end of the packet as TCPDump does, so it kind of strips a little bit extra out, but you can see for the most part it primarily stays the same. Be careful. Not every packet capturing tool is created equal. So, you may feel like you're getting all the information from a packet capture. I've noticed, and well, I should go out and just go ahead and say some of the Cisco utilities that are out there, RSA's notorious about it, but Cisco especially. Hope no one from companies is listening or watching that, but they're really notorious. And vendors are bad about this, and they'll probably even admit to it. They're bad about stripping out in some of these Pcaps or these capture files or log files of what they feel relevant that you're wanting to see. And I've had system admins, I've had folks that contact me like, I'm not seeing what you're saying I should be seeing. That's probably because your utility or your SIM or your firewall is just not capturing it for you. But this is where packet capturing comes in, because you want to get the true identity of what that packet looks like or what that transaction should look like if you visit it. So this is a really kind of a toolkit kind of addition here. So to run it, just ran it for you. You can download it. Easy way to download it on your machine is just do an apt-get, apt-get install TCPDump. Chances are it's already on your machine. I've ran across very few Linux distros that it doesn't have it built in. You can do that on any version of Linux. You can also install it on Windows. You can run a program called WinDump. When you install WireShark on Windows, and I still think they do that, I haven't used WireShark on Windows for probably 10 years, I'll be honest. I think they still include WinDump as part of the install WireShark. I think. Don't quote me to that, but I think WinDump is the packet capturing backend that WireShark uses in Windows. But you can download WinDump independently and run it through Windows if need be. The reason I even bring that up is some of you all are server admins or run systems that run Windows Server. And I realize that you want to packet capture from a Windows machine. So early on, rather than, you can probably put WinDump on there. Still don't recommend it. I would recommend using SSH, pulling it down remotely, and go with the command line route, or going through PowerShell or something along those lines. It's just a lot of overhead on your Windows server to run WinDump. Personal opinion. Totally personal opinion. So first things first, this is where I think a lot of people, when they get into packet capturing, they don't effectively understand exactly what's going on from the machine that they're capturing from. First off, you have to connect to the network that you're going to sniff from. And this is where kind of the cool stuff comes in. There's two ways you can capture traffic. You can either go through the air, so there may be times where you have to find rogue access points or whatever the case may be, you may have to capture wireless. So one of the things you would want to do is have an appropriate capture utility that would allow you to capture over the air. So in that slide set, one of the things that I've given you some links to things that I commonly use. One of my favorite cards that's out there is an alpha card. So depending on what version of alpha card that you get, the AWUS 036 is probably the one you're going to find more appropriately on Amazon. This very same card, and I'll let you guys pass this around. Most of you guys already have one. But it's USB enabled card. You can attach antennas onto the end of this so you can extend your range if need be. This one, somebody lost my clip on it. Probably one of the students lost it. You can clip that onto the back of your laptop and you can just plug it in and start sniffing as is. The embedded wireless cards that are found in a lot of Dell and Apple machines do not do a good job of interfacing with Kali Linux. You probably already know that. So I would recommend bringing an alpha card into the mix. Plus, they do not go into promiscuous mode very well, and they do not play nicely with some of the Linux distros that are out there. Alpha's a good card. It's cheap, it's durable, and it works. You guys, I can pass it around if you want to take a look at it. Alpha card. Go and search it out on Amazon. I'll leave it up here so you guys can take a look at it with Ray. And my plan is I'm probably going to stop at probably about 3 or something. We'll stop the cameras there and we'll take a quick break. Another thing that you want to look out for is just what kind of USB cards do you have? And I never remember this, so let me pull this up here real quick because I cannot remember the chipsets off the top of my head. But any of those chipsets here will work with those with Kali Linux. So I don't know if you guys can see that or not. The Atheros Array Link chipsets. Chances are, if you get like a Hawking or something like that, look and see if the chipset is a Raylink or a Realtek or an Atheros. The Atheros chipset is what's in this Hawking card here, and I think the Raylink is all of the alpha cards. So as long as you get an alpha card with a decent antenna, chances are it will interface well with Kali Linux. Okay? So I'll leave these up here so you guys can take a look at them. Another thing that you may want to bring into the mix is, okay, so let's say that you're capturing on the wire. And a lot of people ask, well, how do I insert my device onto my switches? That's the first thing people ask. How do I get my device connected into my switch and almost in stealth mode? So one of the things I really recommend picking up is get yourself something like a LAN tap. I picked this one up from Hack 5, and Hack 5 I think has sold out of them. but it is that little throwing star LAN tap. So I'll pass this around. What this is this a 4-way tap. So basically I can use that as a pass-through, run that into my switch, and then any of these 2 ports here, I can tap into that and literally actively sniff the traffic out without having to go through some massive, reorganization of my cabling there. If you're working in networks where, let's say you're doing a pen test or you're doing a vulnerability assessment where they're running some type of MAC filtering or they have some type of port security in place, and you want to determine, okay, how do I get myself in that network? These are really nice because they allow me to kind of insert myself and capture packets from the network without having to screw up somebody's VLAN permissions or whatever. The only bad thing about this is this auto-negotiates you down to 10 megabits. So you're not going to get any speed here at all. Whoa. You're not going to get any speed whatsoever. So keep that in mind with a lot of these utilities you put into place. Something like a LAN tap will not always work out with you. I've got the link in there, and I'll show you where I picked this one up from. Whoops. Go back to my workspace. I might have to put Firefox on workspace. But those links are active as far as I remember, and it has this LAN tap in here. So everything I'm showing you, $40. Very durable case. Put that in your bag, hide it in your bag. I've used that. I'm not going to say where I've used it in vulnerability assessments. I will say that Marshall, or CISO's here, I have not used this in Marshall's network, so wise to know. But I use it from home all the time. It's just a nice little tool to add in there. Hack5 has that as well. So pick one of those up. I find good success out of those. Another neat thing that you can pick up as well, and I'll let you guys play around with it, is Hack5 has come out with this little utility called a packet Squirrel. Have you guys seen this yet? Really, really awesome. I have the link out here, and I wish I can click on it and show you what it actually does. Well, I'll do it. Why not? You guys are here. I have one of these in hand. I just got it Wednesday, and I've only been playing with it a couple of days, but it is sweet. Maybe Hack5 will pick me up and sponsor me, right? Start sending me this free stuff. So, I'll call it out today. I have no shame whatsoever if you haven't found that out about me. But the packet Squirrel is basically a man-in-the-middle type attack. So if you have like wireless access points that you want to get packet captures off of, this thing has 3 different payloads on it by default. The first one is you can do an open VPN connection into a network. So if you want to remote in and see traffic and run and interact with the network, you can set up an open VPN payload. It has 2 Ethernet links on each end, so you can use that as a pass-through as well, so you can pass through your traffic. Once that boots up, where you see that little switch on the side there? That little switch, depending on where you slide it to, will run a different payload, and these are shell scripts. So you can modify these shell scripts to do a number of different things. The first one is to run an open VPN connection. I already mentioned that. The second one is to run a DNS spoof. So you can spoof a DNS and see if you can dupe a user into getting redirected to a website and see if they see the anomaly and you redirecting their site. But the third one that's really neat is the packet capturing option of this. So what you do is you pass through your network traffic, you plug in a USB drive into this. This is just a little Gorilla drive, and I'll show you the output of this here shortly because I was running one over here earlier. So once you boot this boots up like any computer, and it runs the script to begin to capture packets automatically to a nice little Pcap file using TCPDump. So this will run TCPDump on your network without intervention of a screen or having to remote into it. It automatically runs that. And then when you push this little button, I don't know if you see that in any of the pictures, when you push the little button that sits on the top of this, that little button right there, it will stop and save your TCPDump output capture. So you have a packet capture, you pull your drive, plug it in, and you see your payload. So really, really cool to run, to automate packet capturing and to make it easy. So I'll play around with that more. We're going to turn it loose on the voting machine if I can figure out a way to interface it into that voting machine out there. I want to see if that's plain text or if there's packets, or if it does have the capability to send packets. I'm assuming it does. But Hack5, this is one of their newest little utilities, and I've really been impressed with it the more I use it, because it's simple, it doesn't take a lot of know-how to use, and it's easy to deploy. So if you have employees or students and you say, take this down to my data center and put it in my network, and make sure this switch is on, plug it up and fire it up, and then go back, send it back 24 hours later, you have packet capture. So another little thing to add to the toolkit here that you guys can kind of take a look at there when we go on break. Just don't steal it from me, because that's my only one. And I want to play with it more this weekend. So but check that out. Sorry I get overly excited about new toys bringing in. It's just the hacker mentality side of me. Like a kid in the candy store. Can't help it. Alright, so that's just getting stuff set, getting the equipment in place. One of the things I think a lot of people miss is, I had a conversation earlier, I'm firing up WireShark on my machine and I'm capturing traffic, but I only see traffic from my machine and the local switch that I'm capturing from. Keep in mind that you're only going to see what your network's going to let you see in that segment. So if you want to get out of the realm of that, get stuff like packet squirrels, run your Raspberry Pis in the segments that you want to capture in. So you're not going to see all the traffic in your network unless you're capturing on a core switch. It's only to the VLANs that you're capturing in, and even then, you're going to be limited on what you're going to see. So just for the newbies out there that have never done anything in packet capturing before, you can play around and kind of get used to stuff on your local machine, but if you really want to start to deploy this on an enterprise, you really need to start bringing in utilities to allow yourself to capture within those segments if need be, and be able to do it quickly and agile. Next thing we need to do before we move forward, and I know WireShark has this capability, but I'm old school, is, and sorry that this PDF shifted this down, it was way up here, so I don't know why it did that, is to see what interface that's capturing on. So I'm going to plug in one of my cards just to show you what the output is here. And I always assume that people coming in, because it is in the title of what it says it is, that it is WireShark, an intro to WireShark. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to see what cards that I have to capture from. So if I do an ifconfig in Linux, which is the equivalent of ipconfig, you can run ifconfig in Mac too, you can see that I have two interfaces to run off of. And one of the things that you're going to have to do first, and I'm going to go ahead and plug this card in so you can see this hopefully, if I can find a place to plug, is, okay, you don't see any wireless interface to capture from. So once I plug that in, I'm going to connect this to Linux. If I run ifconfig again, if you have the right card, you won't have to go through all of the rah-rah to install the card if you get the right chipset. And you can see after I run ifconfig the second time, you see a WLAN 0 show up. So WLAN 0 is that card that I just plugged up. So easy as pie that I now have capabilities to capture from a wireless card. Okay? The next thing that I need to do is, if I have an interface that I'm running from, how do I put that interface from a command line into promiscuous mode? What is promiscuous mode? You may want to take Grant. Help me out here so you don't fall asleep.
It listens for all the packets in the network,
Right.
not just theirs. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's going to take and accept and listen for all packets within your particular network. That could be a reason that you're only seeing a certain segment of the network anyway. So by putting your card in promiscuous mode, you're basically telling the card accept anything that comes through that particular interface on that particular network. So making sure, I know WireShark, and I'll show you when I get to the WireShark screen, it makes it easy to do that by clicking a button. But I realize that if you're going from a command or a terminal-based interface through SSH, you're not going to be able to see that shiny interface. So one of the things that you can do is to literally type in that particular command there. Whoop. Where's my workspace? Well, workspace 2. Oh. Get rid of it. Wow. I know it's in there. Is literally typing in the command sudo ifconfig, whatever interface you want it to convert over, and type in promisc, so cut off like that. So what I'm going to do is just go back to my terminal here, so hopefully I can go back to workspace 2, and I can run sudo ifconfig, and I'm going to put the interface ETH0, which is my physical interface on this, and I'm going to just type in promisc. What that's going to do is it doesn't prompt me, but it did put the card in promiscuous mode. While I'm at it as well, I'm also going to run the same command, just in case I need to run it later on. I'm going to do sudo ifconfig, and I'm going to put my WLAN card in as well. So I'm going to do WLAN 0, and I'm going to put that in promiscuous mode as well. And that's real easy to do. So it's going to put both of my cards. Now, how do you determine whether a card is in promiscuous mode or not? When you run the ifconfig command again, one of the things you look for in the interface output is to see if it's running multicast and if it has promiscuous in that particular first line. And you can see that both of these interfaces now have promiscuous into the command now. So you can see in the output. So that just tells me that when I capture on that card that it's running in promiscuous. Easy as pie, right? Now,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
So is that different than setting it in monitor mode?
Somebody help me out. Yeah, it's a little bit different than monitor mode. I'm not completely familiar with monitor mode. I've been out of the admin field for a while.
I think they're the same. Promiscuous is probably more for hardwired, and monitor mode is more for wireless networks.
I think so.
It's the same idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Wired versus wireless.
Yeah, I think you're. I'm pretty sure you're right there. It may be just an operating system nomenclature there too. I just for the sake of capturing, I've never went wrong, and I've been doing this for 15 years. Promiscuous mode has gotten me what I needed. So if you have the option between monitor and promiscuous, just put it on promiscuous. I mean, it sounds exactly like it means it'll take anything, like keep it clean here, but it means what it says. So, yeah, good question. I always, if you see anything kind of, stands out, it's good to know. I learned some good stuff. Cool. So once I get that set up in promiscuous mode, one of the things that I can do now is I can start capturing packets. And one of the things that I can do is I can specify the interface that I'm capturing on. The easy way to do that is to run the -I switch, which tells me what interface to use. So I always recommend just, rather than elevating your privileges directly to root, this is just out of sanitary good practices, is just to elevate and make sure that you're running sudo, and just run TCPDump with an I switch with ETH0. Now what that's going to do, I'm so used to working on them. So I'm going to do sudo TCPDump with a -I option. And what that's going to do, after I put the space in there, I can capture from ETH0. And that's going to listen on that interface of Ethernet 0, which is my hardwired, internet connection. Even though I don't physically have a plug in this machine, you guys know if you're working from virtual machines that it piggybacks on the ETH0 interface back to the laptop, the physical machine that you're on. So you can see there that it starts picking up traffic. It's capturing from that interface. If I want to capture on the wireless interface, stop it. I talk to myself a lot. My apologies. It's 50 Shades of Grey up here sometimes. The only thing that I need to do is run that same command again. Most of your Linux outputs usually will label as WLAN 0. I'm still trying to figure out, and for some of you more Linux-centric folks that work on it on a daily basis, someone, and I heard this on a Hack5 podcast a couple of months ago, and it was in passing. Did they change the WLAN 0 interface on newer versions of Linux? Because I'm using the newest version of Kali, and I still see WLAN 0. Have they changed that name? Or am I just imagining things? Someone on a Hack5 podcast said they're changing some of these interface names, and I wish I could go back and find it. And I've asked people, and they're like, "You're nuts, you're crazy." But
on my laptop, it comes up as WLP4S0.
That might be what they're changing it to. So if you haven't been keeping up on Linux lately, there's a lot of deprecated commands that's happening. So if a command doesn't work, it's probably because it's been deprecated. So look up if you're getting into this, or if you've been doing this and you're jumping back into it, go back and see the commands they deprecated, because it's caused me a lot of grief. And you can see I can run that interface. It'll run that on WLAN 0. I'm not forwarding any of my traffic through there, so it's not technically going to capture anything across that card. Because all my traffic's being filtered through ETH0. But you can set it up to just capture on whatever interface you want it to capture on. So it's not very hard to set these up. And that's through your -I option. Now, no, it's not very useful to capture the screen. So one of the things that at least I'm not interested in all packets coming through a network. Sometimes I want to filter. And I'll show you how to do post-filter captures. You can set up capture filters to only capture certain types of traffic. So if I want to capture only UDP, if I only want to capture port 53, I can capture those using a filter in TCPDump. Or if I only want to see TCP, I can do that as well. One of the things that I could run, for example, is if I want to run TCPDump and only capture on UDP destination port 53. Okay, so all I have to do is put that in quotes, and it tells TCPDump only capture the data coming from that particular port there. You can also specify whether you want that to be a source or a destination port, which is through a DST or an SRC command built into there. So you can tell it, I only want to see UDP source port 53 to see what machines are using UDP and kind of filter out what machines are living on my network at a certain point in time. This will extend into the network forensics talk tomorrow, but I'm going to run this here real quick and just kind of give you an easy way to determine what's going on here. I'm still trying to figure out. So I'm going to clear off this command. And before we take a break, we'll go ahead and do our first capture. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and open up a second window from this one. And in this window, I'm going to run something cool that I show my kids all the time. And I have a little 9-year-old, and she loves watching this. She thinks this is the coolest thing ever, and she pulls it up herself. So if you learned anything from class today, this is something to use for Christmas parties. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run some stuff in Telnet in the background, just to show that we can filter out traffic. So I'm going to run telnet towel.lincolnlights.nl. Some of you guys may know what this is. See if you can tell me. So I'm just going to kind of let that run in the background. Just kind of let it do its thing. You'll know it when you see it. Such suspense here. But it literally runs in all things. I just love this. No matter how many times I watch this, it just excites me. It's the entire Star Wars movie, Episode 4, across the Telnet connection. It literally goes through the entire movie, start to finish. And I'll just kind of let you watch it in the background there. but I'm going to let that run and do its thing. This is kind of fun practice. So let's say that I want to capture that traffic, okay? And I only want to capture the traffic in that particular connection. So I can literally run TCPDump. I can capture that. I know that's on ETH0 interface. But one of the things that I can do is, going back to that same philosophy here, is I need to tell TCPDump that I only want to see stuff on Telnet. So what am I going to have to tell TCPDump to do here in order to capture what's in that interface? Somebody help me out here. What port does Telnet chatter on? 23. So what could I say here?
Maybe TCP 23.
So I can do port 23, so I can just do 23. Or will it tell me 23 if I put in 23? Or do I need to put in quotes? Or I can just say that in some cases, depending on how TCPDump interacts, I can try TCPDump port 23. The syntax error comes up, so sometimes you may have to tell it if I know what port it is. And you can see right there I run port 23, and that's capturing all of that telnet traffic on the screen. So that's not chattering anything HTTP, and you can see everything coming through is coming from that IP of Blink Light signing out. So let's say you have an interface, and I'm not telling on system admins, but we still have a lot of system admins who love to use Telnet, especially to see if their switches are still up. If, from a security perspective, remember, Telnet is not encrypted by any means. And if you're trying to argue the notion to get people away from Telnet over to SSH, which is encrypted, capture their Telnet traffic and take to whoever is in charge their password and say, look, I captured the password on Telnet when they were remoting into that machine. Here's your plain text password coming across Telnet. And here's everything that you did in that particular session. That might be a case to move over to SSH. You didn't hear that from me, by the way. But that's, if you're still using Telnet in the network, that's what you're going to see, even in a man-in-the-middle attack. But you can see as long as I run that, this is all of that stuff at the packet level happening. Now, granted, obviously, you don't want to see that flash up the screen the entire time. So one of the things that you may want to do is to be able to capture to a file. Another thing you can do is one of the things that I have as well is how to delimit traffic. I can also capture only packets that are destined to a particular server, for example. So let's say that I want to capture data that's only going to the host of SecureWV.com. So let me go back to Workspace here and clear that out so you can see it. Sorry, I'm going to cut off the movie. But if I run TCPDump and I want to run with that interface there with a let's do a source host of SecureWV.com. So we'll do a, see if I can carve that together. I'll do src host. Okay. Sorry, I can't remember anything off the top of my head. Let's do src host www.securewv.com. And that should go. So what that's going to do is that's going to run a packet capture that's only going to capture data from the source host of SecureWV.com. I'll show you exactly how that's going to interact. So if I go to hack file, nothing. You see nothing coming out the screen. If I go to Google, go do a search for Bill Gardner. Nope, wrong Bill Gardner. Nothing. But if I go to www.SecureWV, and if I built my filter right, it should light up. And you can see right away, by visiting that particular domain, it captures only source packets going to that particular domain. Okay? So that's one way to keep that going. If I go back to Google from there, you can see as long as I'm on this particular website, it's going to continue to collect packets. And it's only going to collect packets going to that particular domain of SecureWV.com. So that's one way to get around that as well. You can also do destination filters as well. So anything that has a source filter, I can change that destination over to a DST, which will change that to a destination. So anything that sees SecureWV as a destination IP address will also change that as well. And you can see it's also capturing packets from SecureWV that way as well. So as long as you have terminal access and as long as you have TCPDump, you should be able to run these particular commands. Now it becomes a conundrum where, okay, I've got all this. I'm able to capture it to screen, but what good does this do me? So another resource that I would very much encourage looking up is how to write the filters. Filters are either do or die in determining what packets you get and how many packets you get and whether those packets are relevant or not. I've worked with a lot of folks from the financial sector to military sector in doing this very stuff. And the folks in the financial sector ask for completely different information than the folks from the military, mainly because they're dealing with completely different types of attacks. The people that are attacking the financial sector are after certain resources. They know that those resources are on those servers, chattering at this port, utilizing this particular operating system and these services. Their filters are going to look different from the military because the military wants, people that are trying to ping the military boxes are after certain types of documents and other private information. So one of the things I'd recommend, and this is where I learned from, is going out and just searching the Pcap filters that are available so you could literally run man Pcap and hopefully put in filter. So they have a man page for a Pcap filter. These are awesome. I wish someone had taught me this very early on because you get into how to run the source host, how to run the destination host, if you need to do something on Ethernet destination, you can keep going. You can do gateway, you can do source-net. I mean, the list goes on and 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 on. Chances are, if you need it and you need to build a filter for it, you're going to find it in that expression document there. So rather than me bumbling on and showing you each one of these particular filters that you can run, go out and search that man page. And that is, just as a review there, man space Pcap-filter. It's another easy way. If you're using T-Shark or you want to get into T-Shark, hopefully that's showing up there. Another thing that you can run is the WireShark filter. The same thing. So if you go back and you search that, man with WireShark filter, same thing. So it has all of the options that T-Shark uses and WireShark uses. Now remember, if you've ever used WireShark before, you have the ability to set filters in WireShark and the GUI as well. You can also run those in T-Shark. So all of those Boolean and Ethernet filters are located in there. So if you can't think or come up with a filter in WireShark, chances are you'll probably find a good example in the T-Shark filters there. So if you learn this, essentially, if you memorize those two pages or become acquainted with them, you've taught yourself WireShark and TCPDump, chances are. I'm not going to candy code it. It's not hard to learn. So that's a resource that I didn't stumble across until very later on. Another thing that I'd want to show you, I kind of skipping beat here, and I don't want to spend too much more time on it, is the last thing you can do with TCPDump is to save your packet captures. So let's say that I do want to save that packet capture that went to the destination host of SecureWV.com. The easy way to save a packet capture in TCPDump is just to run the -O option, which is the output, and you can call this SecureWV, and I always save in a Pcap format. In WireShark and other programs, they're now optioning you to save in a Pcap X format, I believe, off the top of my head. I wouldn't quite recommend going and jumping over to the new Pcap format because they're not very portable in a lot of other tools like ngrep, which I'll show you tomorrow. But basically, what's output? Ran the wrong. My commands are running together. It's actually W. W, and I'll call this SecureWV.Pcap. And what that will do is when I hit, so it'll listen on the screen. It's not going to, you can set an expression where it outputs to screen. But one of the things that it will do is as I visit that particular page, it will save that. Now by default, if you're in Kali, remember this all goes to your home folder. So, chances are you can see, if I go to home, you can see that SecureWV.Pcap files being created on my desktop. Right now it's 0 bytes because I really haven't visited anything. But be careful when you're running a packet capture. Make sure you close the packet capture out and save the file before you're done. In this case, I'll go visit a couple links on that page. Just view some stuff. Go back to SecureWV, go to the special events. And then in order to close out that packet capture, what I recommend doing is rather than killing it with a Control-Z, see if you can do a Control-C. That will literally stop the packet capture. So rather than killing it, I know a lot of, if you're a Linux guru, your habit go-to is do a Control-Z and you can kill off anything going on Linux. Don't do that, because if you do a Control-Z, that sends a kill switch to that program. In some cases, if packets are being captured, and if you're in the middle of a couple of packets there at the end, and you send that kill switch, it will drop those last couple of packets. In this case, if you do a Control-C, it will tell you at the end how many packets were received by filter. So this is a really small packet capture, but it looks like we picked up 762 packets in that filter that we ran in TCPDump. So remember, just again, that's a W, which stands for write, and whenever you call this, it will save in that format, which is usually a Pcap. And you can specify wherever that needs to go by doing a CD and change the directory. This is not an intro to Linux course, and I understand that, so you can capture as need be. Alright, so any questions on TCPDump? Just wanted to get that out of the way. My preferred method of capturing packets to utilize in WireShark. So what we'll do now is let's take a quick break and take about 10. It's 3:17, 3:16, 3:17 right now. We'll pick back up. We say 10 minutes, so we'll pick back up at 10, 3:27. So I'll get started. Line here. This is something that they added into WireShark 2 that's really helpful because this shows if there's any chatter on this particular interface. You can see WLAN 0 has no data coming into it. A free wrench. I will pass this goodness off to you guys at the end of the day. But anyway, if you don't see your interfaces, okay, one of the things that I would recommend doing is firing up terminal and running WireShark as sudo. So that way you are a particular admin on this one. it doesn't change a lot of what you see in Kali. And it also gives you the warning, like, you're capturing from root, you're doing stuff awful. Well, you know, okay, so is what it is. But the thing about doing this, you can see certain interfaces that you did not see just running it as regular. Now, Kali's not a problem, but if you're running it on Ubuntu or Sift or something like that, it does make a difference. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and in that file that we downloaded earlier, this was in the GitHub repository. Let me find it here. Desktop. Put it to my desktop. There is a WireShark evidence packet example. So this is where I'm pulling this from. This is just a standard listing of just packets that have been picked up in WireShark, primarily HTTP and TCP packets. So you can see WireShark's pretty well, pretty uniform on what you're seeing in here. One of the things I like to do initially is set up the way my interface looks. Normally when you're doing forensics or you're doing any type of investigative stuff in WireShark, the last thing that you want to see is when the packets came in. You want to see the timestamps that's attributed to the packets. You can set up view filters for these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to go under Time Display Format, and I'm going to change that to whatever I need it to see. So most of the time people like to see UTC time of day and even the UTC date and time, but I'm going to just put in UTC, let's do UTC time of day. And that changes that view without having to go in and diddle much with your settings. That changes that over to the time that this was captured UTC. So an easy thing to determine. Notice that each packet is broken down based upon the packet that it was sent. You can see the source and destination packets that were sent in the packet capture itself. So depending on what protocol it's being sent, so I can look and see real quickly there whether this is a TCP or an HTTP. Notice that a lot of these are color-coded. So as you kind of slide down the packet capture, you see that there are different colors that are set. For example, DNS, the DNS protocol, is actually colored as blue. WireShark does that by default. It splits out its particular protocols based upon color. One of the questions that people always ask early on, what do these color mean? Okay, so you can turn these on and off. If you don't want to see colors, or you just don't want to see them, you can turn them on and off. But if you want to see what the coloring rules are, you go under the View menu and go to the coloring rules. And it will tell you what the breakdown of these particular coloring rules are. So for example, if I want to see how DNS is coming in, or how TCP packets, sometimes it's kind of not very telling though, because you can see here the DNS coloring rules are actually showing up as a bluish color. You look in these coloring rules here, you see anything about DNS being listed as blue. So it's kind of deceiving, but what do you know about UDP? Help me out here for some of you guys that are more into system admin.
That's how you joke about it, but I don't think you get it.
So why would a TCP rule actually show up as green when the coloring rules don't have it listed as green? They actually have it listed as a bluish color or purplish color here. So what's going on here? Remember with protocol stacks, what has to happen before we have IP? We have to have TCP, right? So protocol stacks will sometimes change the coloring of that. Notice that all the HTTP coming through is green. So if you're wondering, okay, so if I'm confused of DNS is showing up as blue, and I want to see that as red, one of the things I can list here is actually add my own coloring rule and say, you know what, I want DNS to show up as something that is a little more festive. So I'm going to make it yellow. And notice that all of my DNS entries now come in as yellow. So some of you guys work with traffic, other types of traffic, and some of you don't. For example, some of you all may get a treasure trove of evidence on DNS entries. Some of you all may get a treasure trove of evidence on Telnet or SSH. I know some of you are looking for, okay, I want to see who's SSHing into my network. You can set up coloring rules to find that. And the cool part about WireShark, I hope it doesn't look much different up here, but you can see all those little yellow swatches of color there. You can easily go to highlighted portions of that and see where that traffic's coming in if you set up those coloring rules correctly. You can change those on the fly if you need to. So you can colorize conversations or you can colorize rules. I find myself going to this more and more all the time. So you can do away with that if need be. You can export those and bring them into different portions of WireShark. But I find it personally to be one of the most helpful things in the newest version of WireShark is getting used to the coloring rules. Because this is something that you did not see in WireShark 1 is this little benchmark of color swatches here. Makes it easy to find your traffic. So another thing that WireShark does is within the packet will give you a good indicator of what's inside of these. So remember we use TCPDump as a way of capturing the packets. WireShark is a way of decoding these packets and organizing them in a little bit easier of a manner. So what I want to do is I want to go back to show the breakdown of what actually these things do. Go here. I know it's ready. I just want to see it. There we go. So what do these packets do? And so each individual menu tells me what I can do here. So you have the listing of packets, the details, the packet count, and we can look at that in the hex value, and we also see what we call a display filter here. So I just wanted to show you what the PowerPoint I put in there, just so you won't, missing it again. It's really hard to work on a single screen up here. WireShark. There we go. Nope, backwards. Somebody has hijacked WireShark. Where's that? There it is. So, let's say that I want to find out more information about this particular packet. Let's just say packet 1, for example. The very first packet in this packet capture. So I can pull up my display filters here, and I want to look at that frame. Wow, that was nice. I want to see what this tells me. So this tells me when the packet arrived, what the coloring rule is, but down here I can determine a lot of stuff based upon where this came from. For example, I can look and see where and what router possibly this came from. Now you can turn this off, but the nice thing about WireShark of what it does is that it allows you to at least see the first part of that MAC address, and then it labels what it sees that as against a database. So this is that MAC address. You can determine real quickly that came from D-Link routing. I always leave that on because often the parentheses there gives me the true MAC address anyway. So that's the source and destination MAC addresses. So the source being the machine that it came from. You can see that it looked like it came from an Intel, and off to the side, the MAC address that it came from. It also breaks down that particular address as well and shows particular bits on whether or not that may be a factory default. So if someone is spoofing their MAC address on your network, if you dig down into the source address, you might see some indicators here that somebody is spoofing your MAC address on their network. Common problem in especially certain networks where people try to get around the MAC filtering. So keep that in mind. It may be happening more prevalent than you might think. Another thing, it also goes into the type of protocol being used. In this case, this is IP version 4. Gives us a lot of just different information about the field itself, specifically the source and destination IP addresses. In the bottom down here, it also gives me a little idea of the TCP. If I need to see the source port and the destination port, for example. So let's say I do a packet capture and I want to see an IP camera. What source port is that IP camera using? What is my vulnerable port there? So in this case, this HTTP packet is using the source port 55220 with a destination port of 80, which is typical HTTP traffic. Not so much for the source port, but for the destination port it is. If you dig down a little bit deeper in here, you can see that it even geo-IP located our IP address. I always recommend keeping these on and using WireShark 2 and above, because it will geolocate those IPs. And right away I can determine, who's that going to? It's Facebook traffic, right? So it's standard HTTP Facebook traffic. What it does is it takes that destination IP, runs it against a geo-IP database, and then it points it back. It even tells you what latitude and longitude that's reporting from based upon that geo-IP database. This is automatically built into Kali Linux's version of WireShark. So if you see like a massive amount of IPs that may be coming from like Tor proxies or Tor routers, ITP proxies, stuff like that, you can easily look at the destination geo-IPs and say, you know what, we're getting bombarded by IP addresses that are coming from ITP or Russia, or you're not going to see them come from Russia, but you might see them coming from a specific source per se, and might give you an indicator of where your attack vectors and who is trying to ping your network. Just a good little bit of information there. Another thing I can look for in here as well is some of the options. Let me dig down in here and show you some things in here. You can also see some of this comes back. Now it doesn't give me much in there, but some things that I might be able to look in the flags as well. It also shows some anomalies we find in there. I'm not going to get that deep into what some of these flags are, but just know that they're there. See if I can find anything else in this that might be useful. Source IP. Looking for, let me go down to an HTTP packet and show you the difference here, because different packets will show different types of data. One of the things you can also look for in HTTP data that may not be present in a TCP packet is maybe what kind of browser they're coming from. And if it logs their browser, you may have some indicators in the HTTP packet of what type of user agent they're coming from. So let's say you can't find out what IP address, the IP address may be proxied, the MAC address may not be getting you anywhere because you're seeing it at the switch level. What do we know about user agents? Somebody help me out about user agents. What does that look like to you? What is that? So what is a user agent, number one? User agent is tagged to a particular browser. So that will show me what browser this particular user is using or portraying to be using. This can tell me exactly what version of browser that particular user is coming in with. So check this out. I can take this, I can literally copy that particular field, and I always teach my students to do this as a, see if I can do this as a value. You can go out and search browser user agents and determine real quickly, it says it's coming from Mozilla, but I guarantee it's not Mozilla, because every browser user agent says Mozilla. So I could go to, see if I can find what that says. What is that? It tells me exactly what version of browser that it's running. So each browser that's released into the wild usually will tag its own browser user agent on to the end of the packet. So let's say that I want to determine whether a person's using Internet Explorer 10 or Internet Explorer 7. Notice that Internet Explorer 7 has a completely different user agent than Internet Explorer 10. You could use this for a number of different means, whether they're using an outdated browser, or if you have a web crawler that's coming in that's portraying itself as a particular browser. If you've seen with a lot of web crawlers, they'll allow you to spoof your browser user agent, so it makes it look like it's coming from somewhere else. You could also use this to identify particular attacker traffic and just see what kind of browser they're coming in with. So that's kind of for a little bit more advanced kind of users there, but you can easily determine what browser they're coming in with there. You can also, one of the things that, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but I want to talk about capture options, capture filters. So before I get too deep into it, I want to talk a little bit about capture filters. So capture filters, what it gives me the option to do is to set certain parameters in capture filters and only capture certain parts of particular packet captures. I'm not doing any captures from WireShark. It's a matter of just clicking the play button and start capturing packets. I really recommend you going back and capturing packets through TCPDump. Another thing that I can do is set post-capture filters, which is basically applying filters to an already captured packet stream. Easy way to do that is to go in and build the expression over here in this menu by clicking on this box here, and it pulls up this box here, which is basically the display filters. So in WireShark you have capture filters and you have display filters. Capture filters are different from display filters because display filters are applied to an entire packet capture, while capture filters will limit out the amount of packets you're receiving as it's capturing the packets. From a forensic perspective, which one sounds better? Do the display filters, because you never know. Sometimes it's like finding a needle in a stack of needles, and you don't know what you're going to be going after. So I always recommend, if you're not sure what traffic you want, do a full-blown packet capture in your network and then do post-capture display filters. So let's say that I want to build a capture filter that basically captures this IP of 69.63.186.30. Or let's do 192.168.0.100. That's a more common IP. So what I want to do is, if I'm not sure what I'm going to be searching for, and if I'm not sure what my display filter should be, I can search out what I think that it might look like. So I can type in IP, and that's going to list out, okay, well that may not help me out there. So one of the easy ways to look for is see, okay, what do I need to know here? I'm looking for Ethernet, I'm looking for IP. IP doesn't limit it out much, so you really need to know how these filters are put together sometimes to know what you're going to be digging out. So let's say I want to set an IP filter for that particular IP address. The first thing I want to start with is build a filter that goes into IP version 4, and I'm going to set the IP filter as IP.addr. That will set a filter for a source or destination IP address. And notice when I put that in there that it literally populates it down to the bottom. When it populates it down to the bottom, it will either light up green or red depending on how well the capture filter is built. If it lights up red, then your filter's wrong. I can set it to either do IPs that are less than or greater to, but I'm just going to say the IP address is present, and I'm going to go ahead and do a double equal sign. And down here in the IP version 4 address, I'm going to do 192.168.0.100. And notice that it populates down there what I need that to be. I can do IPs that are greater than that address, so if I need to see something that's in a scope, for example, you're looking on a local router and you want to see everything on a local router that's above 100. I can do everything that's above that or below that. In this case, I'm just going to do a double equals, which means it's equal to that IP address. I'm going to hit OK. It populates that in the filter tab for us. Now all I have to do is just apply that filter. Now I have capture filters, and notice that 96% down here in the bottom, if you see that, 96% of my packets are attributed to either the source or destination IP address of 192.168.0.100. Let's say that I want to get a little more granular with that. I don't have to go back to the filter expression builder to change that expression. I can change it on the fly. I can go back and I can type in IPDST. So I can do an IPDST filter and hit and apply that filter, and now it only shows me the IP destination filters that are going out to 192.168.0.100. I can also flip that around and do an SRC. Apply that filter. What's it do? Flips it around, changes it to a source, right? What do these look a lot like? For you guys that were here earlier, that are sticking it out. It looks a lot like what you were seeing in TCPDump. These are what we call BPF primitives, or Berkeley packet filters. Berkeley packet filters are a very versatile filter language that can be used. It's one of the things in my network forensics class we spend weeks on, because if you can become proficient in the BPF primitive languages, then you can really, really, really get yourself around WireShark. If you're just starting out in it, build the expressions based upon this, because it's an easy way to navigate. Once you learn what you're doing, you can just type them in. Let's say that I want to look at anything that goes out to the host of Facebook.com. And notice that right away it does not see that as host of Facebook.com. I can put, so it doesn't necessarily look for things that just show up of particular packet filters. So not giving me much there. One of the things I can type in though, I can do a host of 192.168.0.100 and see if it lights up red, then that means that the host is wrong, or this particular filter is wrong. I can try setting things. I can try changing it. It's not going to change what the output is. I can also piggyback a lot of these on, so I can do IP.addr equals 192.168.100. I can do a double and symbol, and I can do IP.addr double equals, let's see if I can do this. I may have to put quotations in this one. 69.63.186.30. And what that will do when I apply that will show me all of those transactions between that source and destination. So I can build filters on top of each other. I can also set those where it only looks at filters based upon the destination of 69, which gives me the ability to further focus in on particular packets. So another thing that I can do as well is I can literally look for certain protocols and limit out other protocols. So say, for example, I only want to search for packets on TCP port 80 and just look for stuff on 80. I can run that. I can also run, let's see if I can do this. I can also run that as well. See if it'll light up green for this one. No, they've taken that out. Some of these filters do not work in version 2. Another thing that I can search for as well, I can also search for particular MAC addresses. So let's say 192.168.0.100. I want to search out the MAC address in here. So remember, I found the MAC address earlier for that particular IP address down here in the frame. I can go out and search that MAC address. Now I can try to type that in, but here's a little tip on WireShark to get used to. If I want to set a filter of anything in here, right-click it and apply as a filter. You can do that as selected. Now, what it's going to do, it's going to apply that as just Ethernet filter right now. So if it doesn't hit the first time, what I need to do is I need to apply as a filter. See if it'll let me apply that IP. This gets me sometimes. Let's see, apply as a filter. Let's do selected. You can see that I can filter out all of the stuff on that MAC address there. I can do that in any particular field there. I can apply that as a filter. So there is nothing out of bounds of just going and saying, oh, I want to filter out this IP here. Right-click it, go to apply as a filter, and just do selected, and there you go. You've taken care of all the syntax. Shortcut. I wish someone taught that to me years ago, because I've struggled in writing some of these filters. Let's say I want to do 192.168, 1.100, and from that particular MAC address, because IP addresses can change, right, through DHCP. They can change over time. So I want to determine, did all this come? I can do an AND selected, so I can also filter out any Ethernet traffic, or I can go down to that line there that MAC address is stored in, apply as a filter, and do AND selected. There we go. So that's all of the traffic from that IP destination to that Ethernet destination. So I can pile filters upon filters upon filters. You can go for miles if you want to and not have to stop. I've given you all of these particular capture options in that PowerPoint that I gave to you earlier. Another thing that you can do on top of filters, and I want to go back and I want to show you this in the PowerPoint. It's probably relevant that I'll just go back to the PowerPoint here for a while because it's a better graphic. So if I go back to Workspace 1. Sorry if I make weird sounds up here. It's just part of it, I guess. One of the things you got to watch out with WireShark is that WireShark, if you're capturing packets from it, especially in Mac and Windows versions, go back here, pull that up. When you start capturing packets, literally clicking on the WireShark button, and it starts capturing packets from that particular interface that we've set. The problem is with that, we don't have that packet capture saved. If that buffer gets too big, it will start to slow down. And there's eventually a point that the capture is going to get so big on the screen that it can't hold the file anymore. So one of the things you want to set up here is in the capture interfaces. So I'm going back to packet capturing now, is what we call a capture buffer. A capture buffer is a simple way in WireShark to essentially, let me go back and do this for you. So if I go to capture interfaces, let me stop this and go back home here. And apologies if I'm struggling here to see how to get back home, because there we go. So in the capture interfaces, which is under options, remember we were looking at this earlier, or back in the home interface. One of the things that where's my capture options? Oh. Capture options. Stay under the output. You can select to capture to a permanent file. So if I want to capture to a file called SecureWV.pcap, I can browse, or I can literally capture to a permanent file there. I always recommend they have the new Pcap NG format, or Pcap, just out of being old school and using like ngrep and stuff later on that I'll use tomorrow. I usually just capture to straight up Pcap. You can use either way. You can also create new files after it gets so big. So you can specify that after 20 gigabytes or 20K or 20 gigabytes that it'll close out a Pcap file and start a new one. So, and you can also do create a new file automatically after 3 hours. So I can run that, and also with a ring buffer. It basically switches, and it says after capturing a switch in the next file, the given number of files has exceeded. the oldest file will be removed. So what that ring buffer will do is it will literally fill up your disk, and then once it gets to the older ones, it'll just continue to loop. So if you're running the GUI on the network, you can specify to do that. Now that's going to spin up a packet capture just like every normal thing that you see. And you can see there after a couple of minutes it should start doing its thing. Maybe. Should. Hopefully. Maybe spinning up on ETH0. It's not liking. There it goes. It finally picked up its first CDP packet there. You can see they start to come through. So that's how packet capturing is normally done in WireShark. Like I said, unless you're very specific in what you're going to be doing, I would strongly recommend just going the TCPDump route. But I don't want to leave you guys out. Post filters, something that's in there as well. Those are the display filters I just showed you. Here's the display filters example. And the last one that I want to show you down at the bottom, you have copies of these. And if you don't have the copies of these PowerPoints in the GitHub repository, see me after the session or catch me tomorrow and I'll give you the link. Or if you have a Twitter account, follow SecureWV. If you see me in there at Josh Brunty, I'm going to be posting the links to these GitHub repositories. Check this out, though. This particular display filter is probably my favorite. So if I go back to WireShark, I'm going to open up that evidence packet example again. One of the things that I can do in this packet capture, I can type in a frame contains. You want to do keyword searches? If I search my last name in there. So what happens here? What do you think's going on? Obviously it filtered out packets, right? Well, what packets did it filter out? Well, gosh, it's a big screen to work with here. Let's see what we have here. I can't see the bottom of my screen. It's getting cut off here. Give me just a second here. I'm going to resize this so you can see the bottom of this screen. So what's happening here? I should be seeing my filter at the bottom. I can't. Which kind of stinks. Just doing it wrong. Now it's that scaling on the screen there. So I see a number of packets here. Should be probably just a handful. That's essentially telling me that all of these packets here contain within the data frame my last name. So if you're looking for particular what we call dirty words in searches, do a frame contains option. Because down in the actual frame, if you look at the actual data in this frame, what is this? If that has my last name in it, what's it look like it's coming through? Well, I can tell you what I did. I just literally went to my Facebook account and searched through my pictures, and you can see that my last name shows up in that frame. So if you're looking for a particular word, for example, if you have a malware package and you know what the string is in that malware package, go through and do a frame contains and search for that particular text string. It's an easy way. I know that is, poor man's way of finding malware, but I guarantee it works because it's an easy way to search those out. So frame contains, I find students in our program go back and use that a lot. To me, it's probably one of the more useful things in searching for packets. I also have a tool tomorrow that I'll use, show you guys called ngraph, which will allow you to go through packets pretty quickly and search out keywords as well. So we'll do that. But back to the slides here again. I've given you some slide sets that show how capture filters, display filters work as well, and the syntax behind them. A lot of this is just redundant stuff. It gets into how to build these particular display filters, what the correct syntax looks like, what the wrong syntax looks like. If it's wrong, it's red. If it's right, it's green. In many cases, you can pipeline filters as well. So if I want to look up, for example, TCP and DNS entries, I can go in and pipeline that. So if I want to do TCP and I do a pipeline of DNS as well, I can look up all the TCP packets that also include DNS, which should be a good majority of them, if not just about all of them technically. But pipelining is also a good way to determine multiple protocols in use among different packets. So, that's also a kind of a holdover of grep. So if you have proficiency in grep, it's the same concept as you use in grep as far as filtering packets. I should switch that a lot easier. Another thing that you can do as well, once you set a display filter, you can do a file. Let me zoom in on these. I don't need to see these thumbnails. You can zoom in to about 70%. Is that better? It's cutting off some of mine here, up here, but I don't want you guys to be cut off. One of the things I can do with a filter is I can export those filters to a file. So let's say I have a packet capture and I only want to export stuff from a particular MAC address. What I can do is I can go and if I set this filter here, I can go to File and I can export either the specified packets or I can go in and literally export packet dissections. So I can do that as either a CSV or a plain text file. So I can do a packet range, I can do packet bytes, I can do whatever I want to do there. Let me go do an export packet range. That will let me export in a format that may be a little bit easier to set up. So let me just go ahead and do this for you. So I'm just going to do a test, and I'll send that to my computer. What would be the benefit of exporting out packet dissections into a text file? If I can find my own folder. Why would I want to do something like that? What would be the benefit of exporting to a JSON file or a text file or something along those lines? What's easier to search? Any Splunk users out there? Ever brought in a Pcap file in Splunk?
Regex?
What's that?
Regex?
Yeah, you can do regex expressions, which is built for grep. So grep is a nice part of your toolkit to use. If you want to learn anything, learn grep, because that's going to pick up where Splunk does not. I'm trying to find my folder there of where I sent that. I can't find it. But you can go in and export those dissections. I thought I put it under. I'll put it on desktop. It said export, not import. Try this. So I'll put that on my desktop. And I can do selected packets. So I can do a range. I can do all the displayed. I could basically do, based upon my filter there, captured or displayed. So I can do basically set that and literally point that to my desktop. See if it'll let me do it. Now you should be seeing that test file show up. So now I have all of that data in a text file that I could go back and grep through and whatever. So you're not limited on Pcap files. I have a lot of people ask me, Splunk doesn't work well with Pcaps because it doesn't have the apps, or I rather would grep these. I would rather pull these into a program that would aggregate this better. So if you want to go through and just search through plain text, by all means, there's a means to do so. I know we're at a kind of a specialty con here. With you guys are kind of deep in the weeds in security, and want to learn how to easily and be very agile with this stuff. So that's why I'm trying to give you stuff that might be relevant to what you do on a daily basis. Another thing that you can do is you can export those, if you notice, as a PSML or a PDML language. which is more portable in other programs. So that's something else that you can do as well. Couple of the menus here that I like to look at is, and I'm going to clear out, and if you want to clear any filters, I know I'm skipping a lot here, you can hit the X button and clear out any filter. A thing that I go back to a lot is statistics. I think statistics is very good to go into, and the first one I like to go to a lot is protocol hierarchy. Protocol hierarchy will show you and give you an overall view of what's going on in this packet capture. So for example, I can look at this very easily and determine whether or not I see or may see any anomalous traffic. So right away, I see that 98.7% of this traffic is IP version 4. On top of that, I can also go down and look and see how many of those were domain name systems, DNS. I can look and see any ARP, if there's any ARP in there, and I can apply any of those hierarchy as a filter. And then I can go back and look at them. So if I want to look at just ARP entries, I can apply that. If I want to just look at JPEG files, I can do that. So check that out. That's pretty cool. I'll make sure I'm staying on topic here. So right there is all of my packets that transmitted a JPEG file. Easily kind of filtered out for me. If you see any anomalous SSH content, I know a lot of people ask, well, how do I determine what part of my packet captures SSH? I don't want to go in and build filters. Protocol hierarchy, wonderful thing to use because you can be very, very quick at switching data. But it breaks down a lot here on what you can view. Another menu that I like to go in is TCP streams. That's also an important thing. So how do we follow a TCP stream? So obviously a packet of data is not going to do you much. A stream of data may do you a lot. So let's say with that JPEG filter already established up in the analog or up in the statistics earlier, I want to follow this stream and basically see what's going on here. So the easy way to do that is just to right-click on any packet, go down to follow, and you can follow the TCP stream of that particular packet capture. You can do this to any packet. Now, what does this mean here? The red stuff is stuff that is being sent from the source. The blue stuff is the stuff that's coming back. So this basically follows the sequence of what's going on in that transaction to transfer a photo. Okay? So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a packet transaction where an entire JPEG file has been transferred here. You guys know how malware payloads sometimes download themselves? Have you ever seen them before? Image files. Image files embedded into web pages. GIF files. GIF files, if you want to call them that. You can dig into these streams and you might see some stuff that might be of value with you. Tomorrow, when we get into the network forensics section, I will show you how to carve out plain text passwords and how to carve the files out of these. Also, we'll look at some malware traffic. We'll look at some streams from visits to malware-infected sites. You'll see the anomalous traffic being dug out of here. So it's really important to determine at this point, red is what's being sent, blue is what you're getting. And what else do you notice what's happening in the background here as I dig through the TCP stream? This is cool. It shows you what part of that particular stream that packet of data is actually coming through. So you notice that there? It shows you where the packet cutoffs are and going. So as you click through there, you can follow it in the packet sequence. So you can do that to any packets. You can also filter out that stream of data just by clicking that button. So you can also do a packet stream filter by that. But it is a really nice option to know how to follow the TCP stream. And that's they're going through analyze, follow, TCP stream. You can also follow the HTTP stream, which is a little bit different. It filters out some of the extraneous TCP data. So if it's an HTTP packet, you can see some of the data a little bit better formatted in here. And you can see right there, there's your JPEG file. And there's your JPEG payload. Any questions on that? Let's go into expert. See if I can get into here. So one of the things that you can do as well in statistics, I believe, is analyze. You can, let's see if I can find it. I'm running out of, let's see, what about not? Actually, I'll go back to the slides because I'm not seeing it translate my screen here very well. Sorry to keep you hanging here. Another is the expert information. So expert info, if you open up expert info, it gives you an idea of some of the anomalous packets that did not come through okay. So this shows you whether the packet came through as malformed or it came through as it was supposed to. What we're finding, and I won't quote to this because I've seen very few packet transmissions where this has happened. Sometimes packets that have been laden with malware or have been infected with malware will sometimes come through malformed. And sometimes you can see in certain malware payloads that packets will come through malformed. In this case, we probably don't have any, so the expert information in this one is not going to show you much other than a couple of anomalous packets. But if you see anything where warned or notes or stuff has been made, expert info may give you an indicator that these are your malformed packets and your site's infected. So that's some places to look. Another thing that you can look at as well, which is right under protocol hierarchy, is conversations. Conversations will show me essentially who is communicating with what via IP address. So you can see here it shows you IP address A and IP address B. It shows you how many packets were sent between those two addresses, how large the packets were, and it shows you an up and down stream between those. So it gives you a lot of indicators of who's chattering with what. If you want to see what Ethernet addresses, which is MAC addresses, are on there, what TCP packets and what UDP packets are on there as well. Real easy to dig those out. Just to be honest, one of the easy things you can do is just go run that and look at the conversations there. You can do that as well. So in this case, I can look at UDP packets, anything coming across port 53. I can look and see if anything's kind of wonky there. I can also see, okay, who was that 0.100 communicating with? So I could do that, and then I can apply that as a filter as well. And I can also do which way that I want that filter to be applied. So that's really helpful. Just know that there's not a single option in WireShark 2 that can't be filtered. Okay? So chances are, if you see it on the screen, you could probably right-click it and apply it as a filter, or prepare it as a filter. So this is the secret sauce to WireShark, basically. If I see something in here and think, oh, there's 100 again, or there's 69 and 100, that's that IP address that I was looking at earlier, well, let's apply that particular filter. Now I have my traffic up and down that I spent 2 minutes building earlier. So it's all about shortcutting and using these filters to the fullest extent. That's just conversations. So another thing that we can do as well is endpoint statistics. So we can run endpoint statistics against our particular network and see what's communicating with what. So I could, let's say that I want to see that IP address from Facebook there. I can apply that selected as a filter, and then I can map that. This is really cool. So it shows me on the map of where it's geolocating those IP addresses with. That's kind of neat, because people are visual these days, and you can see all of the locations that these particular addresses are coming from. So that's kind of cool in that filter to use. You can limit to display filter and map it based upon that too, which should take me into Menlo Park. So if I zoom out, so you can, it's kind of funny that it's that still. You can kind of see at where Facebook's server is there, at least where it's reporting from. I think that's kind of cool, what I found it to be. You can also copy that into a CSV file if need be. So if you want to look at it more of a spreadsheet format, you can do that. You can also do change your endpoint types there, so that you have a lot of options in endpoints in regards to what you can map. You can also copy these packets. I already went through that. The CSV packets. Let me just go ahead and do it. So if I have, it's kind of hard to do in Kali, but you can paste that into a CSV page, basically. So I won't get into that. Another thing that I find really nice in this as well is using flow graphs. Flow graphs will give me an idea of who's also communicating with who. You find that under statistics as well. The flow graph is basically an I/O graph here. I'll do both, but a flow graph is kind of awesome because it shows you where the traffic is coming up and down from. So you can visually map that. You can also do a save as of that traffic if need be. If you do a save as of the traffic, it'll try to save it as a picture format, and it tries to save it as a PNG. So there's not very many options. Well, I can do a flow graph, save that, go back to my desktop. Now I can see the flow of data from that point that I was looking at on the screen. So if you want to show your administrative staff, okay, this is where certain packets are going to and from. Here's the port that it's communicating on, which is right there, TCP port 80, and you can see the packet sequence in there that it's coming in. You can save that to a picture file. So you can set display filters and stuff in there as well. There's an I/O graph that you can run through there as well, which is it's in there somewhere, the I/O graph. If I want to run an I/O graph on when traffic's peaked in my network, I could run certain things and run certain filters in there. So the best thing to do here is what I would recommend is you just add in all and set a display filter. And if I want to set a display filter of IP, check this out. So I can do IP.addr double equals, and it'll save some of my order filters. 192.168.0.100. I can set that, and I can even set it as a color in my chart to say I want to see that as yellow data. And you can see here that obviously I don't see it in my field here. That's because I probably have it filtered out. It should be showing up. Do time of day. I can do time of day, and did I reset it? Log scale. Let's see if I can zoom out to 10 minutes of traffic. Let's do a little more. Oh, I have it turned off. Thank you. It's hard to see on this big screen up here. So let's do. Let's go down to 1 second. You can see I have a line chart on there now. I can change that over to a bar chart if I need to, if I want it to look more appealing. And then reset it. So I can look and see when the spikes of that traffic occurred. So if you're building like a pen test report or a report to show to admin, hey, we're getting bombarded with traffic from, Afghanistan, for example, or what's reporting to be from Afghanistan. This is a really neat way to chart IP-based info without having to deal with the Splunk, basically. Some people like to chart data in Splunk. You can easily do that in WireShark as well. And you can focus in on specific parts of the day. So I can do, I can even do, zoom out and, get a little more granular at the time of day that this actually happened. The questions on charting, pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot behind the I/O. You can also save that as once you settle on what you want it to look like. I just deleted my line there. Whoops. I can save that, whatever and save that as a picture. So it saves it as a PNG. So I'll save that to my desktop, and I'll call it all packets. And save that, and it'll save it in a nice little graphic for me of what I'm viewing on the screen. So that's also something nice that you can put into your report. They've done a better job of exporting these in WireShark 2. If you've ever tried it in WireShark 1, it was a 50 hot shades of gray. It was really bad. Sometimes it just didn't come out in a very high quality resolution, so that's kind of cool. So that's one thing to look for. I have a lot of options in there as far as how to do HTTP analysis. I'm not going to get into this, but I want to, since we're getting down to about 4:45 and you guys are starting to get the glazed eye look, one of the things that I want to show you how to do is, let's say that you have data in this. And practical usage. You have a web page. The web page of either your client or your business has been compromised. You may have a redirect to an anomalous website that's going out and downloading an exploit kit or a malware package onto your users. Your admin staff has asked you, what is going on when I visit that web page? Fire up a packet capture, go into a sandbox and visit the page while the packet capture is running. Let the Pcap file, let it download it or try to download its exploit kit, and you'll see this in the packet capture. Remember what I was talking about earlier with exploit kits? They have to have a mechanism in order to run. Usually they use the mechanism of running a picture file embedded into an HTML page. So what you could do is, if you visited that web page and you know it's HTTP content, you can export out all of that stuff and those files and then scan them and see if they're laced with malware, and then you know what kind of malware you're up against. So an easy way to do that is to go down to Export Objects. So File and Export Objects. This is something a lot of people don't know about. So if you go to File, Export Objects, HTTP, check out what this lets you do. Any HTTP objects that it can rebuild for you, it will carve out for you. In this case, you see a lot of JPEGs, HTML formatted web page, JavaScript, HTML content, a lot of stuff in there, right? Watch this. I can do a save all command. I can go to my desktop and I can make a new folder. And I'm going to call this Exported Objects. I really find this, in doing malware analysis, a really, really cool thing to do. And then I'll just save it all there, hopefully. If it'll let me do it. And I'll let me do it. If I can hit enter, let's see if it'll let me do it. It's cutting off my bottom part of my text here, so that's why I'm struggling to work here today. See if it'll let you do it. Just hit it. And let's see. Alright, so what will happen after I click save? It's cutting me off, guys, and I apologize. I just can't see the bottom of my screen. For whatever reason, it's just not working. It's kind of sucks when you can't see your screen. But I'll show you what it does. And I'll have some of these. I really need to fix this before tomorrow because I need to do this to show you guys what's going on here. Anybody got any ideas what I can do here? I'll click save. Ah, that works. I was trying to do the save all. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for bailing me out there. So inside of that exported objects, once it saves it, let's see if I can go in and click into the folder now. Now Kelly's going nuts on me. It's all those exported objects. It's really slowing it down a bit. Yuck. Okay. Now let's double click. Open that. Where are you going? Let me go to desktop here. I'll have to dig into it this way for whatever reason. So the folder's saying it's empty.
I think you saved it to the other folder.
Did I save it to the other folder? Let me go back and do this again. So if I go back, do a file, export objects, HTTP. Let's do a save all. Let's go to that folder again, exported objects. Let's open that up. I think I can save it. Did it go there?
That's the file right there, correct?
I should have done a save all. Word. Okay. Open. That should be taking it there. Okay, so the end game in this, I don't know what's going on with Callie. It looks like, so what it will do is it will export all of those files that it could reconstruct from those packets, and it puts it into a folder for you. So any HTML pages, any PHP, CSS, things that you commonly find malware laying in, it puts it out there. It rebuilds these JPEG files as well. So you can see these are true pictures. So they're pictures that commonly find in there. These are the real deal. You know, they're reconstructed pictures. A lot easier to do stuff and work within once you get them out of WireShark. Then you can start to do stuff in other programs with them. You can scan them. You can run a malware scanner on them. You can upload them to VirusTotal. You can do a lot of different stuff with that. So there's a lot of things you can do. Last thing that I want to mention here towards the end, as tomorrow I'll be working, there's the exported files if you were able to view them in SIFT. So I'm going to use SIFT tomorrow because it looks like it's a little more stable than what I was using today. I put in some grep options. I don't really have time to go over grep today, but grep's really good in terms of being able to carve out things that WireShark doesn't do too great in. There's also a file that I'm going to be going back to first thing tomorrow, which is called evidence1.pcap. So if you're in your room this evening, and if you're staying here, and let's just say loneliness kicks in, and you guys really want to go back and do some stuff in WireShark, go through and look through this evidence file. What we're going to do, there's passwords in this, there is user accounts, there's data. This is planted with a lot of data. So if you're looking at today and say, man, I didn't learn anything, this is stuff that I already knew, everything that I did a baseline with today will be used tomorrow in some way, shape, or form. So it's kind of like a scaffolding. We're going to take what goes from these WireShark slides here, what we taught in WireShark, and directly apply it in network forensics. It's unbelievable the stuff that you can extract out of these packets just from knowing where to look. So come back and join us tomorrow. It'll be fun. Talk to any of our Marshall students floating around up here. A lot of them will debate that this is probably one of their favorite classes because of all the stuff that they pull out. You guys, some of you guys had network forensics, some around the wall. It's fun. It's a fun part of class. So, if there's anything that I can do, I'm going to repost the Network Forensics Challenge. Hopefully I'll have that up this evening, so keep an eye on the Twitter page. If there's anything I can do to help you guys, I'm going to put my cards up here. If anything, you run across problems in your business or your whatever, and you need some extra eyes to look at things, by all means, contact me. I mean that. That's the purpose of conferencing is networking. And I'm right down the river here, so I'm a local guy in West Virginia. So put it also in that GitHub repository some WireShark and TCPDump display filters that will help you out as well. So print those out, hang them on your wall, hang them on mine. Really help you out in terms of how to navigate around these things. So apologies for some of the technical snafus there, but and one last thing, and I'll mention this again tomorrow. If you're really wanting to get into this, there's a guy out there by the name of Brad Duncan. Brad Duncan is maybe a malware traffic analysis. He runs a site called Malware Traffic Analysis. If you like playing around with Pcap files and you want to learn more about malware traffic, it's a whole site of nothing but Pcap files and scenarios where he's literally visited infected websites and he goes through exactly how to break down these particular packet captures. It's loads of fun. I do this on spare time, believe it or not. I'd rather do this and watch TV. He goes through and talks about how these exploits download and the breakdown of them within WireShark. So if you really want to get good at this is fun stuff. I'm going to go through a scenario that's a lot like this tomorrow in our network section. So come back and play. We'll have fun.
Thank you.
No problem, guys.